The day the first two ducklings hatched on the farm, and these were the first ever ducklings to hatch on a farm ever since we started keeping ducks. It was obviously a day of great hope, it was a day of great celebration, and a day where we looked forward to a lot more chicks hatching because we were successful in hatching these chicks from eggs in our incubator. Perhaps this is what makes this tragedy a bit more poignant, makes it a bit more harsh of a tragedy, because this chick was raised in the incubator for 30 days. The egg was in the incubator, there was a lot of waiting and watching, and finally, when the chick popped out from its shell, there was a great celebration, as you can imagine, in MeenaBagh Farms. And thereafter, the chick was raised virtually by hand. We were virtually the surrogate mothers of this chick. And we left no stone unturned to make sure that this chick survived. And it not only survived, but thrived and grew up to become, in a couple of months, this resplendent, very beautiful looking duck from the ugly duckling that it was, until one day when tragedy struck. Our ducks, we observed, were mating not only on land but also inside the water. Our ducks are mostly khaki Campbells, and there are also some Indian runners, and they're supposed to be good layers of eggs, but we don't get too many eggs out of them. But whatever we are getting, we are hoping to hatch them into new ducklings. The ducks, of course, lend an aesthetic value to the farm, but this is not the reason why we kept them in the first place. We introduce them as predators of slugs. Slugs love our vegetables and they destroy our vegetable beds overnight, and we discovered that the ducks, they love the slugs. So after almost about 4 or 5 years of keeping the ducks, this year we decided that we should incubate the eggs. So every morning we would come and pick the eggs from the duck pen, number them, date them, and put them inside our incubator. Now, the reason we are having to do this is because our ducks are very indifferent mothers. They would sit on the eggs, but not long enough, and they would just give up, and the eggs would not hatch. So, being the first time hatchers, our first attempt was a big failure. This was the beak of the chick. This is the head. Didn't survive, unfortunately. But on a second attempt, we were successful in hatching two very cute little ducklings. So, in the first 48 to 72 hours, the chicks are still consuming the internal yolk sac, so they don't really need to eat anything. So, after 72 hours, we started feeding them, and what the young chicks need most of all is protein. And the duck eggs, compared to the chicken eggs, has more protein, so we started feeding them duck eggs. So effectively, these two chicks were growing up as cannibals. Apart from the food, what is of prime importance for the chicks is how warm they are kept. The ideal temperatures in which they thrive is almost above 30 degrees Celsius. These chicks were born in early September, but at our altitude, 8,000 feet above sea level, the temperature can really plummet at night, even in September. So, to keep them warm at night, we ensure that we have an hot water bottle for them inside the crate. Beswa, as usual, wanted her nose everywhere and she was already very curious. So, after a couple of days, it was time for us to introduce these chicks to her. And after a couple of weeks, we also introduced them to swimming and we put them in our bathtub. What's important here is that the water should be lukewarm and the feet of the chicks should be able to touch the bottom. So the days rolled by and the chicks grew bigger and the appetites even bigger. And Beswa was as curious about them as on the day they were born. So this is the box for them, a big carton. They got more room now, as you can see, and they already look very happy. So this is their feeding container. We're going to put the feeding container in, and this is where they're going to be fed. And we're also going to keep some amount of water for them. So this one, you move aside. They've been here in this bathroom, by the way, all this while, almost for 3 weeks, and they raise quite a stink. They need to be taken out. So for the first time, they're going to be out of the room, out of the bathroom, and they are going to be introduced to the other ducks on the farm.
Besma wants to pet them, see them. She will not attack them. She's excited to see them. Chotu? नहीं बच्चे नहीं.
इसको बेटा नलके के साथ.
No. नहीं. Just. Don't get overexcited, Beswa. If you attack them, na Beswa. If you attack them, no. ठीक है बच्चों ठीक है. Friends. She wants to make friends with them. No. They're too tiny, Boo. They're too tiny to play with you.
So we let them sun over here for a while, and I think we're deciding to put them in the observatory because we'll have more control over them rather than keeping them with the other ducklings where we'll have no control whatsoever. And also they need to be a little bit warm for the next maybe 2 or 3 more weeks, and the observatory, because it's glass on all three sides, will be warmer. So keeping the ducklings inside the observatory, which was very warm, was a very good idea, but we made one fatal mistake. And that was to keep a bowl full of water inside the cardboard box. And as it happened, one of the ducks went inside the bowl full of water and it couldn't dry because it didn't have the duck feathers, and it died of hypothermia. And the other duckling grew up all by itself, all alone, in solitary confinement of the observatory. We also realize the chicks, when they're very small, are very cute looking, but once they become 1 year old, they become these ugly ducklings. Okay, so now the duckling is almost 45 days old, and we're going to introduce the duckling for the first time with the other ducks. Now, as you can see, the duckling has now become really very ugly, if you want to call it that, and it's all bedraggled. Lost one of the ducks, unfortunately, a month ago, and this is the lone survivor. Now, going to be introduced to the other ducks. No. So what we're going to do now is we are going to put this duckling inside the duck pen, and we have cut the cardboard from the top so that the ducklings can peep over, look at the duckling. Duckling can see the ducks, and they can be introduced in this kind of way until we feel that they are very friendly, and then we can finally release the duckling among the ducks. So here they are. Okay, just the right fit. And so we herded the ducks in, and we are trying to familiarize them in a kind of a little forced kind of way. But we want the duckling to be familiar with these ducks, and the duck should know that there's a duckling over here. So daytime is the right time to see how they react, because in the nighttime they're going to be all alone. So till today evening, we'll know whether the duckling is going to be safe with these ducks or not. And while our duckling was being introduced to the other ducks, being habituated to live inside the duck pen, another very major event occurred on the farm. It was October when one of the rabbits gave birth to five little Angora babies, and our hands were full, literally. And from an ugly duckling that it was, our chick transformed into this beautiful young duck with beautiful new duck feathers. To keep a duckling warm, we lined its little cardboard box with our sheep Loblu's wool. So our little duckling is almost about 2 months old. Going to be kept over here inside the duck pen because we cannot risk it coming out and drowning in the pond. It might be 2 months old, but it has not yet developed its duck feathers yet, the waterproof feathers. If it goes into the water, it gets wet, the feathers are not going to be waterproof, which means that the duck can die of cold. So it's going to be kept over here for some time, and then periodically we're going to take it out and give it supervised swimming lessons. Until then, it's going to have the pen to itself. During the month of November, when we have a lot of schools coming into our observatory and booking astronomy sessions, on the farm tour, one of the main attractions was this duckling. Beswa, of course, was fixated on the duckling as ever. Gradually, we kept the door open for the duckling to be exposed to the outside world, but it remained inside. It ate inside, it drank inside, but did not venture outside. And finally, that day arrived. The duckling walked out of the pen, walked down to the pond, perhaps led by instinct, and waded into the pond. It gave us a few nervous moments, but we realized when we saw the duckling swim in the pond, we saw it swim like a pro. It was only 2.5 months or so old, but it swam like a pro. One thing that we noticed about the duckling was that it kept its distance from the other ducks. It would swim in the muddy pond that we had alongside the main pond, and if it entered the main pond, it would keep its distance. Then we saw a disturbing sign which we now retrospectively think that we should have taken a little bit more seriously. The little duckling was being chased out of the pond. But the duckling was persistent, it wanted the water, it wanted to experiment, and it would wade into the waters again, only to be chased around again. It finally decided to adopt the muddy pond as its own. This is that little duckling, this one over here, the straggler. And there it goes inside. And as I herded the ducks into the pen for the evening, locked the pen doors, little did I realize that this would be the last time me and Biswa would see the duckling. The little duckling was found drowned in the pond when it was taken out by one of the boys in the morning. And then we saw a symptom of what could have possibly happened to our duckling when we saw aggressive ducks try to almost drown another duck in the pond.